Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Hog Roundup with Jacob Morris. It's a all-diamond show today. We have Hogville's Dudley Dawson joining the show to talk all things Arkansas baseball and Arkansas softball. Exciting news for the Diamond Hogs. The Fayetteville Regional announced on Monday. The Hogs have full awareness of who's coming to Fayetteville as the road to Omaha begins for DBH's squad. Just tough, brutal way for the Bogle Bombers to go out this weekend against Ole Miss. Dudley and I talk about what went wrong for Courtney Deifel's squad and just kind of the what-if feeling that remains over a season that was historic in so many ways for the Bogle Bombers. That and more coming up on the Hog Roundup. Enjoy. All right, now joining the show, Hogville's Dudley Dawson. Dudley, thanks so much for joining the show. First and foremost, we have the Fayetteville Regional. We have who Arkansas is going to host here as the road to Omaha begins. North Dakota State, Creighton, and Kansas coming to Fayetteville. Just your initial reactions. I don't think it was a massive surprise to anybody when the three popped up there on the screen, but what were your initial reactions to seeing those three in the Fayetteville Regional?
Well, I thought that Chris Curry and Little Rock might have been here, but if they weren't going to send them here, and obviously they went to LSU, I thought that those are three teams, just like Coach Van Horn said, that they had a chance to be here. It's a good mix. Those are some under the radar good teams that casual fans might not know about, and it's going to be an interesting weekend. And I know that Arkansas fans, Arkansas coaches, and Arkansas players are ready to move on and get into the postseason and try to put some memories of the past couple of years behind them.
Absolutely. It's a bit of a running joke at this point. The Big 12 team, the hot Big 12 team that pops into the Fayetteville Regional, that's Kansas. And, not a massive, catchy, eye-popping non-con schedule for KU, but DVH talked about it right after the draw. This is a talented team. It's a team that's on the rise as well, and it's a team that potentially could give Arkansas trouble as well coming into Fayetteville.
Yeah, I think that Arkansas fans, certainly Arkansas coaches, have a lot of respect for Big 12 teams. They've played a lot of them, whether it be down in Arlington at that tournament or during the regular season. And I think it's and obviously during the postseason with Kansas State and some others. But I think that it is a very good field. There will be a lot of people who will look at it and say, "Hey, why didn't we get a field like Tennessee's in the Knoxville Regional?" Because if you just look from the outset, that looks a little easier. But all these teams that are in this tournament now are playing good. You have to go out. It's so big to win the first game, but even bigger to win the second game of a regional.
Yeah, absolutely. Arkansas beginning with North Dakota State on Friday in that early slot. You shift and you go down the whole entire regional. I think you said it well. DVH talked about just having a healthy respect for everybody that pops in. Creighton comes to Fayetteville here, and this is a team that just got hot at the right time. And when it comes to baseball, that's what's most dangerous. When you talk about a team coming to your regional, they take care of business in the conference tournament. They take down UConn, a team that nearly made the tournament. A lot of people think should have made the tournament in the championship game. That's a team in the 3 seed spot again that Arkansas has to respect, and that DVH gave a healthy amount of respect to right after that draw as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because Kansas is a bigger name, I don't think that they're guaranteed to be in that
Mm.
Saturday winners bracket game. I think that we'll have the opportunity to see them as things go along here. But having caught a couple of all of these games except North Dakota State, I'm very impressed with this field and think that this is another challenge. I don't know that there's anybody coming in as exceedingly hot as TCU and Kansas State have been the past couple of years, but it's so important Friday to go out and get a win. And you got that age-old question: do you throw your supposed ace, or do you throw number two, or how do you want to work this?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, not particularly surprising, but that was one of, what DVH got asked right off the bat there in terms of, who you're going to throw. And he said, "Oh, we know, but we're not going to release it quite yet." In terms of expectations for you with this regional, obviously the field is fresh, it's new. It's, when you looked at that, I'm not asking you to make a prediction right now, but where did your mind go in terms of what Arkansas is capable of with this draw in the Fayetteville Regional?
I got to be honest. I'm not a coach, so I don't have to focus. And I looked at those teams and I said, "That's a really good regional, and
Yes.
it'll be tough for Arkansas to get out of there." Well, I'm gotta be honest. I was waiting to see who they were going to be matched up with, and that is just delicious that they are going to be matched up with the winner of the Knoxville Regional. That doesn't mean that Arkansas is going to get out of theirs. It certainly doesn't mean Tennessee is going to get out of theirs. They will probably have a really good effort from Liam Dole, their
Mm.
pitcher, because after two bad outings, he'll probably come in. But do they have enough to beat the teams to get out of their effort? That's a really good regional as well, as they all should be if you're playing at this point in the season.
Absolutely. I think that's said well in terms of, the team's got to take it one game at a time. We do not. And that's a perfect segue to talk a little bit about it. If you want storylines, if you want, all the delicious, whatever you want to put it as, Arkansas and Tennessee has all the makings of it. I wasn't surprised DVH, he had the politically correct answer of he just said, there's a lot of SEC teams. We figured we'd be matched up with one. But that is potentially a pretty awesome super regional matchup if both teams can make it through their regionals.
Yeah, and I think most people around this area who know I cover baseball know that I'm fond of Tony. That when he was here as an assistant, my wife Petra has often said that his mentality was mine in high school. That's why she broke up with me back then. But it's one of those things that he is a show within himself,
Mm,
him and his coach, and they are it's a very good baseball team that struggled down the stretch, and it had to do a lot with I think the consistency of pitching, and also that everybody was stealing up a storm against them, and I think they
mm.
kind of wound that down a little bit. But that is a great narrative, something as a supposed objective writer that I root for just because I love stories.
Absolutely. If you had to boil it down to, hey, there's one key for Arkansas this weekend, one key to, host the super regional, to get through the Fayetteville regional. It's caused issues the last 2 years. What would it be for you?
Well, the easy thing would not to be give up five in the first inning.
Yeah.
And you got to go out, you kind of fend off that a little bit. They've got to go out and play good defense early on. You got to give your pitchers a chance. I know that we talk about Roots outing, but as DVH was saying today, there were two double plays there. And if you
Mm.
turn those, then you are able to, get out of there and maybe go on and win that. But here's the thing that you cannot in a situation now give up those runs early. I mean, there were what three, 4 runs scored in that game, and none of them after the second inning.
Yeah.
And so the offense has to wake back up a little bit as well.
Yeah, in terms of just finding consistency, I thought it was interesting with Root. DVH was asked about this as well. We have seen the highest of highs, the lowest of lows with him, especially when we don't know when he's going to get thrown. But in terms of just setting the tone, that's so important for this team. In terms of when you get the Texas Zach Root, obviously this is a completely different team than when you get the opposite side of the spectrum. It just with your number one guy, we've seen it time and time again, especially in postseason positions for Arkansas. That is such a determiner of how games potentially go for the Hogs.
Yeah, and I've already had a thought that somebody's thrown up to me. Hey, they should throw Gage Wood that first game and save Zach for the second game. The problem with that, if he's been your ace and giving you good efforts all year, and then you start messing around, you're playing a game. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to do that. Matt Hobbs and Dave Van Horn know what they're doing. I mean, they're gotten to this point as a top seed. But all I say is if you get, start doing crazy things that you didn't do all year, then you're liable to look at your team's liable to look at you and say, maybe we're panicking here.
Yeah, yeah. An interesting weekend ahead for the Razorbacks. We'll talk more about the regional draw for the Hogs after a quick break. All right, back here on the Hog Roundup, Dudley Dawson and Jacob Morris with you, talking the Fayetteville Regional for the Hogs. And I think there's so many storylines for Arkansas in terms of there's a little bit of monkey on the back situation always with this program, but now it's gotten to the point with the last 2 years, this team's just got to find a way to get out of this regional. And, we can say it's a good draw. We can say that, it could have been worse for the Hogs, but ultimately Arkansas has to go out on the field and do it. What type of atmosphere do you think the Hogs are going to get at Baum Walker this weekend? What do you expect to see from the fan base showing up with a big regional on deck?
I think they will show up much like the fans did at softball regional this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
be ready to go. And if their team is doing well, they'll be loud throughout. That's one of the things you can't, if you're the other team, you want to take the crowd out as quick as you can. Because regardless of what we've seen at times in these last 2 years, Arkansas is still 32-4 at home
Yeah.
this year. They win at home. They're a very good team. You'd much rather sleep in your own bed and have your own fans rooting for you instead of in a situation where you're having to play on somebody else's home field. Now that works really well for some teams, but I think it
Mhm.
works better for Arkansas if they're in the comfy confines of Baum-Walker Stadium, getting out early. And I think that's one of the keys again. Coach went on ESPN after the brackets and
Mhm.
talked about Charles Davalon, and I think he's going to be a key. What is he going to do in that very first at bat in the bottom of the first inning? Is he going to get the North Dakota State pitcher unnerved, which is something he can do with all his movement up there? And I just think you don't want to say they got to be front running, but it sure is much easier to lead instead of trying to catch up.
I always think it's such an interesting dynamic to that point, and you hit it right away in terms of the importance of getting out to a good start. About that's where you obviously right. You'd rather be playing at home. You'd rather be hosting a regional, but that's where the crowd it becomes so interesting, and that's where the start becomes so important because you get off to a good start and you're just rolling in terms of the crowds involved in the game and the other teams reeling a little bit, and especially when you get into a postseason atmosphere, that's just amplified. But we saw it a little bit with softball. The opposite can be true as well. When you have a home crowd, you can feel that anxiety if it goes the other way and you don't get off to a good start. And that's why starting hot, North Dakota State, and with the rest of the weekend as well, is going to be so important for Arkansas coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and here's another thing I think kind of factors in these last two seasons when Arkansas's got put out. The teams that have won the tournament have come in with a guy who was about to go into the Major League Baseball draft, who has carried his team.
Mm.
Arkansas has some fantastic players. We know about the Lobel guys. I talked about Davlin, Logan Maxwell. You can go down the list. Arkansas needs to have somebody like the visiting teams have these past 2 years, step up and be the star that he has been during the season.
That's the perfect segue. I was going to go there. I think the obvious answer, right, is, you go, all right, SEC Player of the Year in terms of Ahiva Aloy, if you're looking for somebody to step up. Do you have somebody, a pair of players, whoever it might be, that you have an eye on that you say, hey, this is a guy that I think's going to step up for Arkansas, or quite frankly, that needs to step up for Arkansas this weekend with the postseason in town?
I'm certain the guy who can handle it offensively, who can handle it defensively, and he can control the pitching staff is Ryder Helfrich. He's
Mm.
come on during the middle of the year. I think he's poised to have a big postseason, and I think he's a factor in all three of those situations. He's the guy that I'm looking at the most.
In terms of, if I do have to put you on the spot and I say, hey, well, let's go prediction time in terms of for Dudley Dawson, what do you think Arkansas is capable of this weekend in the regional, potentially beyond? Watching this whole season, watching what this team has gone through, ramping up high, dipping down a little bit low, ramping back up, bit of a roller coaster. How do you see this postseason playing out for this group?
Well, I think that there are a lot of good teams in the NCAA tournament. There are a lot of good teams in these two regionals that are matched up against each other. But if you're scared, you need to go get a dog.
Mm.
You are a baseball team and a baseball program that has been great over the years. You can't get into the mindset of what's happened the last 2 years. You finished second in the best conference in the nation.
Hmm.
You should go out with the mentality you're going to win. And I would be surprised if they don't come out of there and I'm going to Omaha. I really think that they have the opportunity to do that. I sit around, I can say that, but you see Kyle Peterson and all the other guys that talk about this is a team that could do this, and
Mm.
it's not like they're rooting for Arkansas, but they see a destiny, where Coach Van Horn hadn't won the national championship, and this team is good enough to get him there and good enough to win it, regardless of how a few things went down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, this is the team in terms of you've seen what it's capable of, and I think you look no further than the fact that your number one overall seed's Vanderbilt, swept them on the road. Your number two overall seed is Texas. You swept them at home. This team has shown that it's capable of taking care of top-notch competition. It's now just time to not put postseason demons aside, but face those head on and take care of business this weekend and beyond.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of great baseball players out there, but Gage Wood is a guy who obviously had the injuries, has had a couple of bad innings, but he's someone that has gone from a fourth or fifth round draft choice to somebody who in mock drafts is being picked 21st in the first round, not in the 21st round because they don't have that anymore, but being 21st in the first round. He has the potential, along with Ryder Helfrich, to be a guy this weekend that steps up and is a stud. And if he pitches that second game, that's always the biggest game. And so I'm looking forward to watching him play as well. It's amazing how these guys draft on potential.
Yeah, Arkansas and North Dakota State get the Fayetteville Regional started on Friday. You heard it here first. Ryder Helfrich and Gage Wood, players to watch for Dudley coming up this weekend. After the break, we'll talk softball, an unfortunate result for the Hogs this weekend in the Super Regional, falling at the hands of Ole Miss, that and more coming up after the break. All right, back here closing up shop on the Hog Roundup, and Dudley, a shift in tone here in terms of, we go from hopeful in terms of Arkansas baseball, whatever the opposite of that is with Arkansas softball. Bogle Bombers season comes to an end in really disappointing fashion this weekend against Ole Miss. I'll start here. I think it'll be a kind of what if situation for a lot of Arkansas fans. It'll be a what if situation for this program where you have game one, you're so excited. It's not a series you feel you should win or you feel like, is whatever it might be. But, Ole Miss, a non-national seed coming in here, they gave you trouble in the regular season, but you say, hey, at home, at Bogle, everything in front of it in terms of first Women's College World Series appearance. And in game one, you have your top two arms out with illness. Robin Herron pitches the first two innings, but clearly limited. And then Peyton Burnham wasn't even with the team for that game. It has a what-if feeling because you just think, what could have happened if you had both arms available starting game one and starting the series at full strength?
Yeah, the word snake bit comes to mind, and you feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
As a grizzled old veteran, and I'm certainly not the most grizzled old veteran here, Mike Irwin is, but I'm a close second. As a writer, you say, I can't believe they did that, but at the same time, it's one of those situations that you feel as a dad for people like Bree Ellis and Ray Kramer and those who won't get a chance. John James, our Hogville photographer, several other photographers had pictures of Bree Ellis after the game down on her knees, and disbelief and grief. And so you feel sorry for them. And this was a team that just looked like it was going to make it. And then you show up Friday morning in a game that's moved from 8 to 11. And your two pitchers who have been so good for you, and Ole Miss may have gone ahead and won anyway. They're a very good team. But it's just as a dad and a former coach, of softball, all the work they put in, and it's just so disappointing. It's going to take them a while to get over that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, you don't want to take anything away from Ole Miss, a fantastic team. And again, a team that took 2 of 3 from Arkansas to begin the SEC slate. But when you talk about
4 of 6 for the year, 4 of 6
exactly.
For the year, yeah.
And so, I mean, it's clearly a very good softball team. But at the same time, it's, Peyton Burnham and Robin Herron pitched. I mean, I think, did the math. I believe it was 79.2% of your innings pitched in SEC play were between both of those pitchers. And, Cam Harrison actually pitched phenomenally in game one. But regardless, Reese, Cam Harrison, and Lexi King all had ERAs over 5 in conference play. And so that's who you were throwing out there in game one of the Super Regional. And, talking with Coach Deifel post-game, it was clear, she's a coach. She's been doing this for a while. She knows it comes down to a lot more than just that. But there's definitely a what-if aspect with this team. But if you're looking for positives, and nobody really wants to hear this at this point, this team's going to be really, really good next year. When you talk about before portal additions, before freshman additions, you have 6 of your 9 starters coming back and your entire pitching staff as well. It's impossible to replace Bree Ellis. It's impossible to replace Courtney Day, but this team is talented across the board coming into 2026.
Yeah, and you have a top 5 recruiting class of kids coming in that include Lily Faye McWhorter from here in states to 4 out of state that are really good. As you said, they'll add portal additions. I fully expect them to be back in the same position next year. Maybe they'll take that step forward. We'll see. But it's kind of like I expect, I keep expecting Dave Van Horn to win a national championship. He's certainly had the opportunities, and maybe it's this year. And I certainly expect Arkansas to take that next step to get to the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. And this was a great shot at it. But, man, they're just reloading. And that's the thing that Coach Deifel is doing with this program. They're always going to have a shot.
Yeah, and I think you can pick your cliche, but I think the best way to look at it is, expectations are a privilege, right? However you want to phrase it that way. This team felt different, I think, because, and it's why it hurts so much for the fan base and for the program, but there was a full expectation. It wasn't a, wow, this could be the team that maybe could get over the summit. This team, every member of the team embraced the fact that, hey, we think we're a top 5 team. we think we belong in Oklahoma City and we think we're going to get there. And while that makes this feel so much more disappointing, that is, if nothing else, the best form of evidence you have of where Coach Deifel has his program following year 10.
Yeah, and I think most people, probably almost all people in the stands yesterday, and I'm including the Arkansas and Ole Miss fans, thought when Arkansas got it back to 4-4, they were about to go ahead and take that next
Yeah.
step. And obviously, Ole Miss had a couple more big hits. It's just, the human effect here, isn't it? And you just never know what's going to happen, and that's why they show up and play the games instead of do them on paper.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I think it's somehow it's painful regardless. But the fact that you have Ole Miss on your home field, a program that had never won a super regional game, and obviously as a result had never made an appearance at Oklahoma City. So you have a program reach that summit for the first time on your home field. That made it all the more painful watching that celebration at Bogle.
Yeah, and every day they've got a lot of good players, but Leah Binford is the one who put them top. There's no doubt, both in the field and at the plate and on the mound.
Yeah, two-way player, and that's a good point just in terms of that kind of connects to what you were talking about with the fact that when the Hogs fought back and, they go down 4-0 in the first, you say, man, this is a nightmare situation. But within 2 innings, you get it back to 4-4, and then Binford holds Arkansas without a hit for the final 5 innings of the game. Arkansas manages only 1 base runner in that stretch. I was sitting there. I was sitting behind home plate and all of us. And to your point, momentum-wise, it just felt like there was no way Arkansas wasn't going to win the game. And then she had that lineup fooled for the rest of the game. I mean, 5 innings without a hit. 1 base runner was Bree Ellis, a walk in the 7th inning. Binford had it rolling, and it was tough to watch if you were an Arkansas fan.
Yeah. And I was sitting there thinking, at 4-4, they're going to come back and win us. And I'm going to be writing a story next week about a young lady, Najah Kennedy from Texas Tech, who in softball got $1 million NIL this year. And, that tells you how the game is growing, and what you can do apparently with $1 million. You can go get you a great pitcher and get to the College World Series. We'll see how the NIL starts working here, I guess.
Absolutely. Arkansas would have taken on Texas Tech in that first game of Oklahoma City. Unfortunately, the Hogs fall to Ole Miss, and it'll be high hopes for 2026. But, man, this one's going to sting for a while. But that's all the time we have on this week's edition of the Hog Roundup. That's Dudley Dawson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next week.